So, good afternoon, everyone. This is Dr. Aradhna, Assistant Professor from the Department of Psychology, Amity University, Dubai, and the moderator of this session. Heartily welcome our speaker, Mr. Prakash Chugani, Director, eCube Training and Consulting, and each participant on behalf of Amity University, Dubai. Thank you very much, Mr. Prakash, to accept our invite to conduct this session, which I am sure is going to be very, very beneficial for our students, especially for our passing out graduating students. We have with us Dr. Sonakshi Ruhela. She's the Head of Academics, Humanities, Arts and Applied Sciences and Program Head, Psychology and Behavioral Science at Amity University, Dubai. I would request Dr. Sonakshi first to welcome our guest and to give the opening remarks. Over to you, Dr. Sonakshi.
Thank you so much, Dr. Aradhana. It is indeed my privilege, to have our speaker today with us, because one of the things that I believe, Mr. Prakash really touched upon is the fact that how he's a believer of unlimited potential of human mind, which we as psychologists are such strong believers of. If we can see your video, Mr. Prakash, then I would, I would want to
to connect.
I would want to personally welcome you. I would want to welcome you and share this with you that we are privileged today to be able to listen to you, because we also know that you have touched upon 2,500 other lives in 10 countries, which is a huge, huge mark in itself. It is fantastic that you could take out some time for us and our students, because at the end of the day, youth is the real investment. So
yes.
We also congratulate you. I came to know, and I would want to definitely have more conversation with you post the session, is that you have dedicated your entire life to meditation and the concepts and the benefits of meditation. So we welcome you, Mr. Prakash. It is a fantastic thing that you're here with us today. And without wasting any more time, because I want maximum benefit of our students and all people who are joining us today from you, over to you, Mr. Prakash, and we welcome the audience as well, though the moderator for today's session is Dr. Aradhana, and she's a fantastic person. Over to you, Dr. Aradhana and Mr. Prakash. Let's all welcome and have a great session.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sonakshi, for this motivating opening. Our students will be paying more attention to the session now, I'm sure. Yeah, let's start. Now we start. I would like to inform our participants first that Mr. Prakash would like to make the session very interactive and participative. So you all are requested to be very active in dropping your answers and comments in chat box whenever he asks or interacts. And during the session also, you can drop your questions and queries in chat box or in question answer section. We will take up the questions at the end of the session. Please write to either all panelists or to myself, as I'll be reading the questions for the speaker. Mr. Prakash, I would like to inform you here that the students from different schools have joined us today. We have psychology students, we have media students, tourism students, forensic science students, law, hospitality. Few engineering students are here, and management students are also attending this session. We also have our lovely colleagues from Amity Dubai and Amity Noida. So thank you all to join the session. This session's topic is very important and very relevant, especially for the passing out students, that is communication in corporates, the winning edge, where you all will understand the real meaning of communication, forms of communication, and also we all will be learning how to be better, when we are communicating with others. Before the session begins, I would like to take this privilege to introduce our speaker, Mr. Prakash. Mr. Prakash Chugani is the Director of eCube Training and Consulting. He propels individuals towards excellence through coaching and training. He primarily facilitates leadership, negotiation, and communication skills development programs for mid to senior level managers. Some of the companies where Mr. Prakash has provided the training include BDO, Hilton Worldwide, Rotana, Emirates Flight Catering, Vedanta Group, Al Taylor Group, Al Ghurair Group, and many more. He has more than 10,000 hours of executive development experience under his belt. Mr. Prakash has inspired the transformation of 2,500 individuals across 10 countries, including the Middle East, Africa, America, Asia, and Australia. Other than this, you will be happy to know that Mr. Prakash firmly believes that learning, development, and growth is done best by taking the inside out approach. That is to master one's own mind before gaining mastery over skills and other people. To this end, he has been a practitioner of meditation for 20 years now and has delivered various self-help talks on the by Eye St. Martin Radio in Central America and has facilitated seminars and conferences to a range of audiences in Africa, Australia, Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, Oman, Saudi Arabia, Singapore, and Sri Lanka, and many more. Many congratulations, Mr. Prakash, to contribute so meaningfully to the society. With this, once again, we welcome Mr. Prakash to the session, and over to you, Mr. Prakash.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that very warm welcome and that introduction. I'm privileged. Thank you.
Thank you. Looking forward.
I'd like to start off with congratulating everybody on this particular at this particular time for being available here now and here, because to me you could have been doing so many things right now, but you chose to be here, and I think that's a great choice that you made. So I'm very privileged to be in this August gathering, although it's virtual, but I can actually sense the wonderful energy that's coming from each and every one of you. And as promised, it's going to be a very interactive session. And so let's start off with something that is going to help us to ice break, but at the same time, it's going to support us in understanding communication at a very deep level. And that is the first type of communication that we actually engage in is the communication with our own selves. You know, you have this voice inside that constantly keeps chatting. It's very important to try and listen to that voice and see what is it really saying to you. Now, one thing very important, this was a wonderful research that was taken, that let's say you want to apply for a position. The first thing that you need to do is you need to feel that you are worthy enough for that position. When you believe that you are worthy enough, then you will definitely apply and you will try to pursue it and you will get that particular position. But the first step is that you believe that you are worthy enough. And what is that belief about? It's about this little voice that's going on inside you that's constantly communicating and telling you, Prakash, you are worthy for that position. Go on, try it out. And there's a lot of self-appreciation that's required to build that self-worth of yours so that you believe that you're worthy enough. Because if you don't believe you're worthy enough for anything, it's difficult to achieve. So that first part of communication, which I believe is the most critical, is the communication with yourself. So right now, each of you are sitting there. What is it that you're telling yourself? You're probably wondering why you're here in the session. You've probably been made to come here. You probably came on your own. But whatever that voice is there, you know what? The good news is that you have the privilege, the opportunity, and you have the choice of changing the voice to whatever you like. Build it in a way that's going to support you. I'm reminded of this acorn, a tiny little seed. It's just a nut. Yeah. When I think of a nut case, I think of this acorn. Now, when the acorn is just a nut, it has a dream of becoming a big, wonderful oak tree. When it's planted and it's given the right resources, nurtured, it becomes a mighty oak. It had unlimited potential within it. And all it required was believing in itself and taking that resources that was expected for it to become that mighty oak. It did not want to become a banyan or a coconut tree or a mango tree. It just wanted to become its best self, which was this mighty oak. And for us, each of us, we have our best selves. We have our own magnificence. We have our beauty. And all we need to do is through this little voice inside, which is constantly communicating with yourself, start believing in that brilliance and in that beauty within you. That's your first step to any communication, because everything in this world is created twice. Everything is created twice. First in here, and then it's manifested outside. And so it's so important to see what is it that you are printing on the screen of your mind, because that's what is going to come out into the world sooner or later. And so let us start with this interesting self-appreciation before we get on to anything else on communication, because this is the first step of communication, in fact. So I want you to take a pause, just sit back wherever you might be, relax, and appreciate something that you did today, or that you wear, or something about yourself. It may be your behavior, it may be your thought process, it may be something about you that you feel you need to feel appreciated for, that you believe you want to respect. And so I want you to just pause and respect something about yourself. So I want that voice inside to start thinking about what is it that you have within you that you want to respect and appreciate. There may be a million things, but just think about one beautiful thing you like to appreciate about yourself right now. Okay, now that you've done that, I'd like you to just type that in the chat box to the organizers and panelists, right to the organizers and panelists, so I get to see one thing that you've appreciated about yourself. So just type it in that chat box. So drop your comments here. You actually have a nice prompt there. So I'd like to know, what is it that you want to appreciate about yourself right now? When you're ready, please put that in your chat box so I get to see it as well. And it also gives me a sense that you are all with me. All right, thank you for that. I was wondering why I couldn't see anything at all.
Yeah, it's going directly to the organizers, Prakashji.
Mm-hmm.
And we have about 70 participants already here. So yeah. I've written my answer as well, Mr. Prakash.
So I think just to save time, it would be a good idea for us to move forward so that we do not spend too much time over here. So maybe I'd like to ask Dr. Sonakshi, what is it that you had?
Well, I wrote a very generic answer and a very specific answer. I said, I appreciate the fact that I have a wonderful family, and I think I like my smile. These are the two things that I've mentioned.
Beautiful. All right, so I'm sure there are so many others there. So whenever Arvind sends it to me, I'll at least know that we've got some answers coming in. But let's move ahead. Remember, appreciating yourself is a very beautiful space to start with. That is an important part of your communication with your own self. When we speak about connection, today, if you look at whatever life has, it's all about connections. I wanted to get something done in the hometown that I'm in, and I wanted to know if I knew somebody who knew the municipality authorities. And so I just made a call and said, do you know somebody in the municipality? They said, yes, they know somebody. I got connected to that person and I had a job to be done. It got done almost instantly. Connections are a very crucial component of life. So the first connection that you want to have is with yourself. You have connections with the Almighty, with the Supreme. You have connections in the family, members of the family. You have connections with your relationships or your relations or relatives. You got your neighbors. You got people who are in your city. You've got connections when you go to work, which I'm sure all of us are ready to. Some of you probably already are. But at the work, you have your office colleagues, you have your counterparts, you have your boss. Your connections with each of them are very important. Your connection with your customers and your clients, critical. So if you look in life, your connection with each other and with your own self is very, very important. And communication is that lubricant of these connections. When I'm a good communicator, I'm able to forge the right connections. I'm able to sustain those right connections. And I'm going to see how I can leverage on these connections. And so it's important to understand that connections is what really makes this world go around. But what's the key within these connections is communication. Communication is critical. And I'll show you how critical it is. There was this research that was done, and this is the Holmes report. Some of them have been from the IDEAS group. 85% of the workforce conflict in the Middle East stems out of miscommunication. $37 billion is the total estimated cost of employee misunderstanding. And that's about $62.4 million per year. That's a staggering amount of a figure in terms of the cost that we are actually wasting because of misunderstanding. And that happens due to miscommunication. $26,000 is the cumulative cost per worker per year due to productivity losses resulting from communication barriers and errors. These figures are quite humongous when you look at something as simple as what we might think communication to be. But let me tell you, communication is not as simple as we might think of it. That's one of the biggest barriers. They say that the biggest problem with communication many times is that we believe it's already done or it's easy, but no, it's complicated, it's complex, and it's very vital. I'm a leadership trainer. I'm a trainer for negotiation skills. I'm a trainer for soft skills, team building, teamwork, a lot of work that I do for soft skills in corporates. And one of the linchpins of all these areas is communication. You want to be a great leader, you need to be a good communicator because you want to influence people. You want to be a great negotiator, you got to be a great communicator. You want to be a good manager, you want to be a good communicator. You want to be good at time management, you got to be a great communicator. And the communication, again, is not just external. It starts with internal communication and then it goes external. And so let's go and try and understand more about communication. To start with, the first question is, when you look at the word efficient, what does this word mean? Now, because I can't see your responses, I just would go ahead and tell you what it is. I thought we'd probably get some responses from you. That seems a little bit difficult. But what is efficient? And I want you to take a pause and think about this word efficient. When you say efficient, what comes to your mind? Efficiency. Okay. When I'm being efficient, it means that I'm making good use of resources. I'm maximizing my resources. Or as the Americans would say, you're sweating the assets. If I could sweat the asset, then I'm being efficient. There's another word which is effective. What's the difference between being efficient and being effective? Being effective is achieving the goals, is reaching the target that you set for yourself. For example, if you're in Dubai, in the academic city, and you want to go to, let's say, Jebel Ali, if you're being efficient, you ensure that you have the right amount of fuel in your car. You ensure that you start at a particular time when there's least amount of traffic. You do all those wonderful things to ensure efficiency. And you can get there probably for the fastest bit of time. So it probably takes you 20 minutes to get to that place. But being effective is to ensure that you have the right direction and you're actually going to go and reach Jebel Ali. Because if you could be very efficient, you can be taking care of all the stuff about your fuel and the timing and the traffic, but you might just land up in Sharjah instead of going into Jebel Ali. And so then you're being very ineffective. So efficiency is being able to use your resources well. Effectiveness is seeing that you achieve the target that you set for yourself, achieving the goals. Now, efficiency and effectiveness are two very important components that lets you achieve excellence. So it's not that one is more important than the other. Both are very critical for us, but that's when you're going to be able to achieve excellence, is when you do these two together. And in communication, what is being effective and what is being efficient? When I'm communicating, if I'm efficient, I'm using good words, I'm using good sentences, I'm using good grammar, I'm being very efficient in the way I speak. But if I'm effective, it means that I'm able to get what I really am here to achieve. So for example, if I want to convince somebody to stop a certain habit, and I may be very efficient in the words that I use and the examples that I bring out, but if that person does not get to change eventually, and if they continue with a habit, I'm not effective in my communication. So our target is both. Today's session is all about how can I be more efficient in my communication? At the same time, how can I be more effective so that I can achieve excellence? Let me give you a beautiful example of a true story. And this was when I was in Dubai. I was working as the sales executive for the waste management division of one of the largest companies in Dubai. It's and one of the oldest as well, probably 80, 90 years old now. And so I was a sales executive there, and I completed my MBA. Now, one of the things I could have done is I could have just sent a memo to my boss saying, I've completed my MBA. Can you please see if you can give me a promotion? Because now in MBA, I'm a postgraduate and I think I deserve a promotion. So can you please see when I can have the next promotion? And if I do that, which is what one of my colleagues did, I get a response back from my boss saying, well, thanks for your email. We have taken note of the fact that you've done your MBA. Well done. Congratulations. If there is any vacancy, we will let you know. By the way, just to let you know, there are 10 others who have actually completed the MBA who are sales executives, and we will see who gets the job first. And so that's the way in which we could communicate. Or what is a better way to communicate? And this is what I actually did. When I completed my MBA, I had this beautiful note done. It was a nice letter to my boss where I'd mentioned how I've completed my MBA and what are the subjects that I have learned and how I could actually utilize that for the benefit of the organization. So I've learned problem solving, and so I'm going to be a great problem solver whenever these issues come up, which we just noticed over here in the past week or two. In terms of decision making, I've learned how to take great decisions. I've learned how to be a great leader, and therefore I could lead people towards certain goals. And so I actually had a great case built of how I could use what I've learned to the benefit of the organization. And so I went up to my boss, I gave him that letter, I said, listen, I've completed my MBA, and these are the ways in which I could benefit you as an organization. And by the way, there's a vacancy up in Fujairah. There's a regional manager's vacancy there. And I believe that I have all the skills that are required for me to fill that position up. I've gone through the job description that the HR had actually sent out across to the organization as well outside for applicants outside the organization. And I think I'm absolutely apt for this particular position. And so when I gave all that amount of information, it took us a month. And in 1 month's time, I got promoted to being the manager of the Northeastern operations of our organization. Now that was promoting me 3 times in terms of the triple promotion. So I was a sales executive. You had to have a senior executive. You had to have an assistant manager. And then you had to have a manager. And I got the position straight up. And I realized that one of the keys to getting me from where I was to where I actually reached was my communication, the effectiveness and the efficiency that I used in my communication. So just remember these 2 very important aspects: efficiency and effectiveness equals excellence in communication and in anything else you want to do in life. So the question is, what, according to you, is communication? When you hear the word communication, what comes to your mind? So generic response I get from people is exchange of ideas. It's sending information or message from one side, it's received in the other side, and then it's sent back to you. And so you have a feedback as well. And so these are good examples of communication. But let me tell you what is really effective communication. First of all, it's meeting of minds. I could be communicating and talking to everybody over here, and I can bet you that there may be some of you who are sitting wherever you may be sitting. You may be looking at your mobile phones. You're probably trying to see what some messages on your WhatsApp. Or you're probably thinking about something that just happened before you came into the session, or you're thinking about what you're going to do after you leave the session. In any way, believe me, we are not communicating. Impossible. Unless you are completely engaged with your mind in what's happening here, and you're not multitasking, we are not truly communicating. So remember, your first aspect of communication is to ensure that your minds are together. All right. So I'm just hoping that now, at least after this, all of you have yourselves engaged with what's happening over here. And if you have to engage with what's happening here, you've got to disengage with certain other things that's happening in your life right now, including your thoughts in your minds. That's a very important part. You know, there are so many times people are sitting face to face. I have seen people who live together for 35 years and they have a problem in that relationship. And they come to me and they say, you know, I have this problem in this relationship. I say, what's the problem? They say, we are not able to understand each other. There's a communication gap. I say, wow, You guys are living for so long, you live together, you live in the same house under the same roof, and you still have a communication gap? Obviously, because communication is not about just being together face to face and talking to each other. It's about meeting of the minds. It's about engaging at a mental level. The other way of looking at communication, and this is one of the most simplest definitions you can ever have of communication, and that's this. Communication is getting the right response. So remember, it's not just the words you speak. It could just sometimes be, for example, I forgot the birthday anniversary of my wife, or I forgot the birthday of my wife, or the wedding anniversary. I forgot our wedding anniversary. I come back home, I'm all nicely, done with my work, and I'm quite excited to come home. And all of a sudden, I look at her and she doesn't say a single word. All that she does is she's quiet, she's silent, which is quite, it's quite unusual for her to be quiet. Many times I've tried for her to be quiet, but she's not. But when she suddenly goes quiet without any rhyme or reason, then I get worried and I get tense and I say, no, something I've done, some mistake there, which is why there is no word spoken. And so then after probably 40 minutes, I realized that I forgot our wedding anniversary. And that day would be the last day that I'll ever forget my wedding anniversary. I'll never again forget it the next time. So how effective was her communication? Brilliant. She didn't have to say a single word, but she got the right response. Every year thereafter, she gets her diamond ring, or she gets a golden earring, or she gets her watch, or something beautiful, and a beautiful, outing to a nice restaurant. But she got what she wanted. And so effectiveness in communication is not about how well you speak. It is important that you speak well, but it's not just enough that you do that. And it's not just how well you listen either, because remember, communication listening is an absolutely important skill. But it's not just the two, but it's also about getting the right response. And if you get the right response, you've nailed it. So when we look at the forms of communication, especially face-to-face, these are the three areas of communication that you would normally be able to see. One are the words that you speak, and they're called the verbal communication. It's not just what you speak, but words also that you write, written communication as well. The tone of voice. So in face-to-face communication, it's your tone. So you can hear my tone. I could sometimes whisper. Excuse me. I could sometimes be very soft. I could sometimes have some alliterations. I could sometimes have questions, punctuations, all of those things in the tone of my voice. Tone is important. And my body language. Well, you can probably see my face and my smile, a little bit of my hands, but that's all you can see. But there's much more to body language, especially when you're face-to-face in communication. The question now to you is, when you think of words, what percentage of communication do you think goes in words? What percentage in tone and what percentage in body language? If you have to be effective, what is the percentage that is usually conveyed to the other person through my words, through my tone, through my body language? And there was this person called Alfred Mehrabian who did a study to find out what percentage is actually being used in our lives when we're doing face-to-face communication, especially in terms of how the other person is picking up words, tone, and body language. And usually we think that, words are very important. So in my communication, 70% is actually happening through my words. My tone is about 10% or 15%, and body language is also about 15%. And so I think 70% words, tone 15%, body language 15%. And that's how we used to think before, until that was debunked and we realized that no, that's not the case really. When you're communicating, more than your words, it's your tone that matters. In the tone in which you say those words. So if I have to say, I'm so happy to see you today, well, that's the tone. It doesn't seem happy at all. So I have to have some excitement, some energy, some joy in my tone. I'm so happy to see you today. It's that happiness that needs to come out when I really use in my tone. So my words are important, but tone in which I say my words is far more important, and the body language is important. So if I'm going to say, I'm so happy to see you today, I mean, from my face, there's absolutely no expressions. I mean, I look like the most sad person when I say those words. And so body language turned out to be the far more and the most important in comparison to the rest of the three. And in terms of percentage, Mehrabian actually came up with the percentage, and he showed us that your words were 7%, your tone of voice was 38%, and your body language took up 55% of your communication. And so body language is very, very critical. So let's look at these three as we go into seeing how we can become more efficient and effective in our communication. When we look at your words that you speak or even in writing, 4 simple C's. These are the 4 C's that will get your communication to a very beautiful level. Firstly, it's clarity, being clear. You know, there's this true example of one of these people who are in the ATCs, air traffic control, and they instructed the aircraft descend 2500. Now the aircraft heard descend to 500 and it descended to 500, which is to 500 meters, and it actually crashed. But the ATC controller, what he was really trying to say is descend 2500. He actually meant descend 2,500 meters. So he didn't use the word TO2. He said descend 2500. Now, because of the lack of clarity in what he really meant, of course, now because of that, they've changed the way the ATC communicates with these pilots. And that happened after a huge mistake of the lack of clarity. So 2500 is 2,500, that's what he meant, but the pilot thought descend 250 was TO 500, and he came down, and that was a bad day for him and for everybody else, and probably it was a very sad day for them. So clarity is important, and when you do clarity, you also need concise. Concise is important, and I like this beautiful thing. You know, wise people speak when they have something to say, whereas fools speak when they have to say something. And so they keep saying, speaking, they may not make any sense, but they just believe that the more they speak, the more smarter they might seem. But concise should be the key. And so when you look at clear and concise, it's KISS, keep it short and simple, or keep it short, sweetheart. That's a very important part. So you don't have to have large words, big words, profundicated words, not required. Simple, clear words, a language that the other person can understand, goes a long way in the way you communicate and the way you help others. Because what is communication? It's about getting the right results. So if I use all big, large, beautiful words, but the other person doesn't understand me, I've lost it. So please, clarity and concise, and also complete. The communication should be complete. So if I were to say, can you meet me tomorrow in the afternoon at the crossroads? That's incomplete. Tomorrow in the afternoon can be anything, all right? So I need to be clear over there as well. So tomorrow in the afternoon, 2 p.m. at the crossroads, for how long? For an hour. And for what? For us to just have a chat around what's happening in the world today. So that's complete. So remember, completing your communication is important. That's one huge area of communication that is getting lost in the world today. We forget to be complete in a communication. And so it's, you know, the W's, what, when, why, where, and the H, how. These would be very good guidelines for you. Use these 5, what, when, where, how, and which, and you will have complete communication. Courteous, be courteous in your communication. Be nice to the person on the other side. Be gentle with them. Your courteousness is important. Again, there's this beautiful saying, who you are speaks so loud that I cannot listen to your words. Who you are speaks so loud, or who you are speaks so loudly that I can't listen to your words. Which means that there's a lot that you have to build in terms of your own credibility if you want to have good communication with people. And if I'm not having credibility, and if I'm not being courteous enough and I'm speaking to people, I might be logical. I might do everything so very well, but because of me not being courteous enough, they don't want to listen to my words. Forget it. And so 4, clear, concise, complete, courteous in our verbal communication. What about communication when it is, okay, this is a nice one. It's probably going to help you to see, there was this research that took place. It was a classic study in 1978 by Ellen Langer, Arthur Blank, and Benzion Chanowitz. It is a very, very classical study, and people quote it in almost every topic that they talk about because it's so beautiful. What they did was, they actually had people who are actors to go and break a queue that was standing to take photocopies. And so the first set of actors were told, go break the queue to get your photocopies and tell them these words. Excuse me, I have 5 pages. may I use a Xerox machine? And so they wanted to see how successful they were when they use the words, excuse me, I have 5 pages, may I use a Xerox machine? And then the next set of actors, they told them to use these words. Excuse me, I have 5 pages, may I use a Xerox machine because I have to make copies? May I use a Xerox machine because I have to make copies? And the third set of actors were said, go on, break the queue, but tell them these words. Excuse me, I have 5 pages. May I use a Xerox machine because I'm in a rush? Now they took the data back to see who do you think would have got maximum permission, allowance by the others to go ahead and make those photocopies. Who would have had maximum success? Was it the first group, second group, or the third group? Now, everybody would usually think it's the third group, which is in fact the true answer. The third group who said, excuse me, I have 5 pages, may I use the Xerox machine because I'm in a rush? 93% success rate. The first group, excuse me, I have 5 pages, may I use the Xerox machine? The success rate was about 55%. And here is where the study was a shocker to everybody. The second one, which sounds very illogical. Excuse me, I have 5 pages. May I use the Xerox machine because I have to make copies? Well, what a funny thing to say. I have to use the Xerox machine because I have to make copies. Well, obviously, we're all here for the same reason. But they had a 92% success rate. A 92%. Why? Simply because they used the word because. It showed that psychologically, people need some explanation when you want to do something. If you just go and say, I want to use a Xerox machine, you have no success. But when you use the word because, they don't care what you say after that. But when they feel that, hey, you have explained yourself properly, and there's that courteousness there, you've been courteous to us, well, come, please go ahead and do it. Even if there was no logic after the word because, but because you started saying because, and there was some explanation you gave, you've given permission. Now, then we go to paraverbal communication. That's an important part of communication. It's about the tone of voice, the tone in which you speak. Now, I used to be in the debt collection department at one point of time, and I remember saying these words, and I never used to get the check. And I was wondering why. Then I realized that my tone was not good enough. I used to say, can I have the check? When I speak to people on the phone, this is how I say, can I have the check? It doesn't really effectively use the word the way it should be. And so then I was told that you could actually use it with certain pauses. And then it could become a question. Can I have the check? That became a little more effective. Can I have the check? I'm just showing a little bit of sense of urgency. Can I have the check? You know, I've been trying so long. Can I have the check? So that was a little bit effective. And a more effective one was, can I have the check? And when I started saying that, my success rate of getting the checks from my clients went up a huge amount of percentage. Can I have the check? Wow, that became stronger. It was like, I know my business and I deserve the check that I'm asking for because I've given you my service. So your tone is very important, and please pay attention to that. Many attempts to communicate are nullified by saying too much. So you don't have to say too much sometimes. You just use the right tone. And the last amongst the three is the body language. This is nonverbal communication, and that's 55% of our communication, a huge part of it. Your posture, how is it that you're sitting? When you're studying as a student, you can't be just, sitting in the back in a very relaxed position. It doesn't show very well. So you need to be sitting in a way that you're showing that you're keen, you're interested. And in fact also helps you. Posture also shows emotion. There's a lot of study about posture. And so if you want to feel confident, let's say you want to go for this interview or you're going to meet a client, you want to feel confident. You can't go sitting down like this. You got to be really able to see that, how I can show that, as confident, like any animal, usually when they want to show confidence and they want to show that I'm stronger, bigger, and better than you, they enlarge their body. And so your posture also, when you can enlarge your body, you start feeling, and I'd like you to do that right now, wherever you're sitting or standing, try and just make your chest a little bit larger, push your shoulders to the back, and see how different you feel from when you actually have your shoulders closed. When you have your shoulders closed, it makes you feel sad. It makes you feel tiny, petite. But when you start doing this, you start feeling much better. There's a strong connection between body and mind and body, and vice versa. So your posture is important in terms of how it makes you feel. So have a nice erect posture, strong posture, open posture. It sends a very good signal to the other side as well. What about your face? Your face is important. Your face, it's the index of the mind, they say. And so especially you cannot lie with your face much. It's very difficult, especially the eyes, your eyes, especially when you have a genuine smile, it shows in your eyes. Your eyes also start smiling with you when it's genuine, it's sincere. Many times I go to the aircraft, I have these air hostess who are smiling, and I know that's so artificial because nothing at all in terms of the eyes. The eyes are just as they are, but there's a big smile, a grin on the face, but that doesn't help. So remember, when you're sincerely smiling, you actually show it in your face, in your smile and your eyes. So pay attention to being most sincere and genuine and warm with people so that your face expresses what you really have inside. Hands are an important part, showing gestures. Numbers, 2, 3, 4. So it's not good and not polite that you keep your hands in your pocket, especially when you're having a professional meeting with people. In a corporate setting, keep your hands out, show them numbers, show them feelings. So for example, when I'm talking to my clients, I want to show them, this is the best I can offer you. So when I put my hand on my chest and show them the best, they feel that I'm being sincere. I'm offering them something of gratitude to them. And so these are very good gestures that we can actually do. The steeple is a very, very good posture to have in your hands. When you're speaking to people and you show the steeple, it actually shows that you're very confident. It gives them a sign of confidence. So the hands are a good gesture for us to use. Proxemics, especially now with COVID, we know we're all keeping distance from people, but otherwise also you have a social distance, about 3 meters. You want to keep people really away and far off. But then besides the social distance, you might also have a personal distance, and then you might have an intimate distance. Intimate distance is really very close, and you'll have that with probably very few people. Intimate distance where you can actually hold them, hug them, you can hold them around the arm. You usually have that with your family members, really intimate. Your personal space is where you don't like anybody who you're not very close to intervene and interfere in that personal space. So be careful when you're actually meeting and talking to people in a professional setting to have enough space. I remember I used to actually not follow this properly, and my head of finance came to me once and said, Prakash, you stand too close to me when you speak. Sometimes I really get threatened because of that. Can you just stand a little bit away when you speak to me? I'll appreciate that. I said, thank you for that, and it's good feedback. And finally, dressing. Wow, whilst all this is in your body language, remember it's important to show them through your dressing as well how serious you're about where you are. And so your dressing speaks a lot, and it's important that you dress as though today is the most important day. You just don't know who you're going to meet today. You just don't know who you're going to see today. Many times I've made that blunder. I'm not dressed appropriately. All of a sudden the chairman walks into this office of mine and I'm like, oh my God, where's my tie? And so it's not a very good thing to do last minute. It's nice for you to be dressed the way you'd always like to be seen by people who you feel are very important. Having said that, this is about communication. What about listening? Nelson Mandela is considered to be a great leader. One of the biggest reasons, he says, is what he learned from his father was to be a great listener. He learned that when his father goes for meetings, and he was a chieftain and he would go for many meetings, he used to go in those meetings with his dad. His dad will sit in the meeting and will never be the first to speak. He will first let everyone speak in that meeting, and his dad will be the last to speak. And when his dad spoke last, everybody would listen. Why? Because they heard him first. Excuse me. So he learned that, and he said, I've taken that gift from my dad to be a great listener, which is why Nelson Mandela was one of the greatest leaders and a fantastic listener. That was really what he held. So remember, your listening is so important. Dale Carnegie, the author for a best-selling book, How to Make Friends and Influence People Around You, said this beautifully. He said, you can make more friends in 2 months by being interested in others than your whole lifetime if you're just trying to be very interesting yourself. So many times you want to be interesting. I want to show people what I did and tell them about myself. But that's not the best way to actually make connections. He says, be more interested in others. Stephen Covey said that. It's in one of his habits is seek first. It's habit number 5. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. So listening, that's why we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Listen, listen, listen. Be a great listener. You want to learn, you got to listen. You want to develop, you want to listen. You want to grow, you got to listen. So listening is key in communication. It's a brilliant art. Don't lose it. Nobody teaches you this art in school, nowhere. They teach you how to speak, they teach you how to write, they teach you how to communicate effectively through speaking. You have the Toastmasters, etc. But how do you listen? You got to develop that yourself. But believe me, if there's one gift you want to give yourself today, give it that for yourself. And last, barriers to communication, language. And language does not mean different languages. It could be the same language as well, but sometimes the way you use your language versus the other person using language can actually have a problem. Accent, how you use words are important. So my boss, when he was a Britisher, and I remember he was meeting an American, and this was somewhere when they were actually just developing New Dubai. And he was there with these people, and they were saying, this is where you'll have the golf. And he was actually talking about the golf course. And my boss, when he heard the golf, he thought it is the Gulf, because that's what when he speaks of Gulf, he can't say Gulf as in the waterway, but he would say golf. And so there used to be a lot of confusion when they speak about golf versus Gulf. And that was an interesting way to see how people with different accents have different things. Cultural, very important barrier to communication. I'm sure many of you have seen this because it's coming forwards everywhere in WhatsApp and every other space. There's this graduate who's actually going up on stage and receiving his certificate from an American dean. And when he receives the certificate, he's an Indian graduate, he's receiving the certificate from this American dean. And when he receives it, he falls at his feet, trying to take blessings from him. That's probably Indian culture, but he does that to the dean. And the dean is shocked and surprised. He says, wondering, what happened? I mean, did he steal something? Did he take something from my shoe? And he was, flabbergasted what was actually happening all of a sudden in this massive environment. So be very sensitive to culture. And finally, location. When you are communicating with people in America, please be aware that if you're doing that on a Sunday, you might be working on Sunday in the UAE, but they may not be working. So it's inappropriate for you to do a call to them at that point in time, or to speak to them in the afternoon when it's probably wee hours in the morning. So be careful about these barriers. And I think we are on the way to moving ahead very nicely, with which I will pause for Q&As, which I think Aradhana G will take for us.
Thank you, Prakash ji. So you would like to take a break for the questions and then, all right, so done. All right, we have some questions, Prakash ji. First, I would like to tell you that it is a brilliant session. I mean, the students are sending the appreciation comments and messages that, very simple way, very nice way of explaining things about communication, which is very, very relevant for our passing out students. Can you see me? Let me switch it on.
No, not yet.
Now visible?
Yes.
Yeah. So I
yes,
was telling that a lot of appreciations coming through the WhatsApp messages and through these messages. It's very happy. It's very nice to know from participants, especially we have around 80 participants. So very nicely elaborated about, the forms of communications and how to be effective and efficient communicator. Internal communication is so important first, so well covered. We have a few questions, Prakash ji. So with your permission, I would like to take a few questions.
Yes.
One student is asking, I think that student has some working experience as well, and she's writing, how would you go about explaining a complex idea or problem to a client who is already frustrated? Any comments on this, Prakash ji?
Yeah, it's a good idea. I mean, I think emotions are very important to take care. That's another big barrier. So if I'm trying to forget complications as well, even something very simple, if I'm going to communicate something simple to somebody who's already frustrated, I have a big barrier. So my first thing would be to try and diffuse the emotion in whatever fashion you could do that. I remember one of the times when my client was totally upset with me, very frustrated and furious, and I had to explain what went wrong. She wouldn't listen. I went to her house with a bouquet of roses first, and I offered her the roses, and I said, I am so sorry for what we did. And she would have never expected that from me. I was the general manager of my department, and for her to see me coming and do that, she was shocked. And so I think first, be creative in seeing how I can diffuse that emotion. And when you're diffusing the emotion, the complicated, unless they don't, it's very important. If you're talking about a complicated issue, unless they have the technical understanding and they know about it, they will understand it. But I would say KISS, keep it simple as much as you can, sweetie. because that works magic. So try to simplify complicated things as much as you can.
Thank you very much. I am sure Sandhya must have got her answer and satisfied with the answer, very sure. Prakashji, the another question we have received is from Ikhtiar. What to do if there is a breakdown in the communication?
In what way? I mean, is that just that's the whole question? What to do if there's a breakdown? Well, remember, the good thing about communication is it can be repaired. So there could be a gulf, there could be a gap in that communication. It's important for us to see what are the steps that I can take and measures. And I think I should take that initial step. I got to start initiating the communication once again. The breakdown in communication has a lot of reasons, and it's important for us to see if I can focus on what is the reason for that breakdown. Try and resolve it. Try and see if I can go and find the root cause of that particular problem. Sometimes it may not be anything to do with you. It could just be a misunderstanding that they had. And so it's important to go and say, okay, listen, there has been some misunderstanding. Can I have your audience, please, so I can explain what really happened over here? The key, again, is to go and to be vulnerable. Be vulnerable. They might come and say, I don't care. Don't come to me. Fair enough. Don't worry. Back out. Think of when is the best next occasion for you to do it. Come back again and make your offering. But I feel we need to let go of our ego. We need to be vulnerable, and we need to step forward and be available to really resolve the issue and try to bring the connection back in space, because connection is key. If you keep breaking down communication, you break down connections. And if you break connections, I don't think we are fulfilling our purpose in life.
Wow, great learning in very simple words. I'm sure he's very satisfied about this answer given by Mr. Prakash. Prakashji, another question we have, how to improve communication at workplace? Please give some tips.
How to improve communication at the workplace? That's what the tips were actually. If you're doing verbal and you use the 4 C's, you need to be a great listener. Okay, let me tell you. Okay, since you asked me the question, I'll add one more part of communication. This was something called the Aristotle Project that Google actually spent millions of dollars to find out what is it that makes great teams great. Right? So they studied thousands of teams across the globe, and they came out with 2 things. What makes great people great? One was contributing in every meeting. So if I'm in a team meeting, for example, I'm called into a meeting room. There are 7 people in the room, and I must ensure that every single member contributes something or the other. Number 1, that's important. Number 2, minimum social sensitivity. Be socially sensitive. You're not talking to machines. You're talking to human beings, and human beings are sensitive socially. So you need to first, before you start communicating subjects and talking about sales and how much orders we've got, or talking about what we need to do next in the organization, or our vision and our strategy, try to understand how people are doing. How are they feeling? Are they okay? Are they comfortable? Is the AC fine? Do you guys want to break? So that's an important part. That's what they found. And that project that they did was called the Aristotle Project. So you can look up the Aristotle Project. It's beautiful. It's wonderful for us to be able to go back to that and learn how we can become better in the workplace through communication.
Great. Thank you very much. I think we can take 1-2 more questions as per the time limit. Yeah. So another question is there, which is talking about the challenges to good communication. But I think Mr. Prakash has already answered that question during the slideshow. Greatest challenges to good communications. You have already elaborated. The another question that we have from. Okay, please.
One final challenge. We did speak about those 4 challenges, barriers to communication. One important challenge is inside here. Huge amount of challenge in terms of my own thinking. So being absent-minded, you're talking to me, but I'm not available. So we have got all these digits right now, the digital phones, we got iPads, we got phones. So when you are communicating, please see how you and others, and set an example to really be 100% available mentally. Today, that is the biggest barrier to communication, being mentally available.
Very true. Thank you very much. One question is coming from our colleague, and she's asking, is there a way we can measure or assess effective communication? Can you highlight something on this?
Okay. For me, I think the biggest assessment, so Anasta, what communication is trying to do? Communication equals effectiveness, right? And so you're effective and efficient, and therefore you will reach excellence. So look at your scheme of things that you're doing in your life. So if I am a person who is meant to do some control, I'm a document controller, I need to be excellent in that area. As a parent, am I an excellent parent? Am I able to see how whatever I've been communicating, I'm getting the right results through my parenting, through my role as a manager, through my role as a leader? If I can see the results, they speak volumes in terms of how well I am. So results, not just in terms of profitability. Remember, in an organization, you need to look for profits, but you also need to look at welfare of people. So if you can do a study and sometimes you do a 360-degree check with others and saying, so how happy and satisfied are you with me as a manager? How clear are you with your goals? How clear are you with what you're supposed to achieve? And so it's nice for you to get feedback from people. And that's the best way to understand whether I'm a good communicator or not. But if you go and ask people about clarity in terms of their relationship with me, and if they say, you know what, you're like this book that nobody knows what's inside, then I think I need to be a little bit more open and communicate more effectively.
Thank you, Mr. Prakash. I think the another question also you have already elaborated, but I will read out if you want to highlight something on it. 2-3 students are writing some tips on effective communication for interviews, because these days they are facing interviews, attending interviews. So can you give some tips?
Okay, so interviews, I think your dressing is very important. When you go for an interview, you have first impressions. You're dressing, you're shaking hands with the person. Your confidence with which you actually, many a times I've noticed, I've interviewed, I've actually been in the panel of interviews, and I've interviewed people up to the managerial and the directorial levels. And many a times in the first 15 to 20 seconds, we really know whether this candidate is going to make it or not. And so you make first impressions, make good first impressions, but also do your homework before you go there. Do thorough homework, thorough study. Make sure that you show them that you're serious about that interview. Don't just walk in there and say, I'm not sure what business you are in. Know their business, know who they are, know who they connect with, know their clients. The more you know about them, the more seriousness you have, and they really look at you and say, wow, this guy knows things, and have questions ready. Questioning is a very important part of communication. Many times when the interviewer just says certain things, if you're not clear, ask questions. Many times you hear things you don't question, and then that's not a good thing. A good communicator questions. So you must question them. You must ask them things about the history of the company. You must ask them things about their job role. You must ask them things about your future. You must ask them things about some things that you would like to add into that particular that role, some exclusions you might want. So it's important for you to be able to have some good questions that show them that you're serious, but you're ambitious, and you want to do a lot of things for the company and for your own self.
Wow, that's so simple and great way, Mr. Prakash, to answer. Thank you for the great answers. I think we have to stop now. There are a few more questions that we can send you, and you can answer through email as well, I'm sure,
yes,
right?
I'd be very happy to connect through email. I've got my LinkedIn there and
great.
Instagram. I'd be happy to connect with all of you.
That's great. Yeah, so thank you for this session. Great answers given by you, and I'm sure all the participants are happy and satisfied after receiving their answers, because these are the very, very relevant, important questions for them who are going to attend the interviews and facing these challenges, and how to resolve and all that. Mr. Prakash, I have to conclude the session because Dr. Sonakshi just left the hall, dropping a message to me that she has to go for some urgent piece of work. Though she has congratulated you and asked me to convey you this specially, that it was a brilliant session she has attended. She would like to collaborate with you in near future. So our time for the session is up, and you have covered most of the questions very nicely. It was a brilliant and very practical session where we all, in fact, including me, we all got to know the real meaning of communication today, where the internal communication is so important here. Then you spoke about the forms of communication. We also learned about how to be better when we are communicating with others. The simple tips that you shared, very well elaborated, that communication is one of the most important soft skills, but it takes repetition and real life practice to master. Clearly conveyed by Sir that a student can have all the technical skills in the world, but if they cannot communicate their thoughts in a clear and concise manner, as he spoke about 4 C's, they will not be an effective of an employee. So my dear students, putting yourself through real life scenarios in the classroom, at home, wherever it is possible, you can learn how to interpret ideas and express themselves more effectively down the line. So keep practicing. So the major takeaways of the sessions are, as he well elaborated, Efficiency and effectiveness are two very, very important words. Very interesting, Mr. Prakash. The way you explained was very, very inspiring. You shared the tips to be effective and efficient communicator, elaborated on 4 C's of communication. Very interesting part that I like the most. Clear, concise, complete, and courteous. You have given wonderful examples regarding these important words. Effective ways of non-communication you spoke about. And I'm sure this session will be very beneficial to all our participants. So I would like to give my feedback or the comment about it, that it was extremely encouraging and motivating specifically, and very easy to understand, very clear and very simple to understand. In fact, I am going back with a lot of learning today, and you're a very professional and inspiring person, I must say, to listen to and to work with also. So we would like to collaborate with you in near future for sure. I have found you a great facilitator, a great communicator who keeps participants and who wants to keep participants very, engaging and motivating. And all the participants must have gained great knowledge and tips from this very important session on communication incorporates the winning edge. And they are going to practice to become efficient and effective communicator, I'm very, very sure. So with this, once again, we will thank you, Mr. Prakash, for this enlightening session. It was a real honor to have you here today on this platform. We will definitely be collaborating with you in future. And I would like to thank all the wonderful participants, all the wonderful colleagues from Amity University Noida, colleagues from Amity University Dubai. Thank you, wonderful students. Thanks to our IT team Dubai, IT team India, especially Mr. Arvindji, for all the coordinations of today's session. Before we close the session, I would like Prakashji to give the closing remarks.
Well, no, my closing remarks would be that of gratitude. I'm really grateful to you, and I'm grateful to everybody else in the team, with you and your team in Amity, for making and bringing this together. And of course, for everybody who's participated today, I'm really grateful because your being here has really been wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prakashji. Thank you very much. With this, we close the session. Thank you, everybody.